Hello, fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome back to Storytime Saturday. Let's read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Okay, make sure that my audio is going. Appears to be. Hello, hello, hello. So glad you could be here. We are going to be reading chapters 11 and 12. We have chapter 11, Quidditch, and then chapter 12, the Mirror of Erised. Stick around for the end of the stream, because after the Mirror of Erised, I'm going to show a personal testimony of mine involving Harry Potter. It has a special, it has a lot to do with what happens to Harry in chapter 12, and so I figured that was a good time to tell my story. So stick around for that. If you are watching this live, remember you can talk to me personally right now in the comment section right over there. And if you're watching this after the fact, please leave a comment down below. Leave a like on the stream. It helps a lot. Tells YouTube that you like it, and it'll share the stream. The more likes that it gets. If you haven't already, click subscribe and click the bell notification right next to it so you know the next time I go live and the next time I upload. I will not be going live tomorrow. As you know, I don't live stream on Sundays, but I will be live streaming on Monday, where I'll be continuing Nemesis, Sherlock Holmes versus Arsène Lupin. And hopefully we will finish it, because I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of ready to move on, let's be honest. But yeah, and then as always, I will stream The Sims on Thursday. I'll be streaming Nifty Knitting. And Friday, I will be hopefully finishing Nancy Drew, The White Wolf of Icicle Creek. I stream every day, except Wednesdays and Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except on Saturdays, like today, at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join me for that. Yeah, cool, awesome. So let's do this. I recommend you get cozy, get a drink. I don't have a drink. I have water today. Today's my low-carb day, so no hot chocolate today. I will remind you, if you are brand new to the stream, that this isn't strictly an audiobook. I'm not simply reading Harry Potter to you. We are discussing it, and so I will stop like every other sentence to explain what's going on or just share my thoughts or ideas about the text. So yeah, if you have anything to share, please let me know in the comments right over there. Know that you are welcome here, whatever house you are or whatever blood status you are, all are welcome. And there will be spoilers as well, because I don't hold back. I talk about the whole book series, I talk about the movies, and whatever else I can think of, I talk about that stuff as well. So if you're not interested in anything being spoiled, I recommend you watch something else. Thank you. And also, I'm just gonna say this too. I don't intend these particular streams for children. I know it's technically a children's book. I don't really think it should be a children's book. I think there's a lot of adult material in the books, especially later on. I'm an adult, and I made these videos for adults, so I will sometimes use adult language and make adult jokes. So just be aware of that. I don't get too get too vulgar or anything like that. I'm not really all about that, but I do like to be authentic, and this is Harry Potter. This is my jam, so I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm going to be myself, and I won't have a filter on that. So just so you know, just so you're aware. I don't want you to be surprised by anything that pops out of my mouth. So, all right, so let's get started. I think I mentioned everything I wanted to say. Yeah. And I also like to listen to Harry Potter music in the background. That's why I have my headphones on. I don't want any reverb on my microphone. So, back to The Face of Voldemort. That's the song we left off on. I feel like that's the song we always leave off on. It's actually a relatively short soundtrack, surprisingly. Let me know if the sound is too loud or too quiet or what have you. Okay. Chapter 11, Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray and the lake like chilled steel. I love that imagery. You can see that the lake like reflecting the same way that steel does. Every morning the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks in the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaverskin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing in his first match after weeks of training. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. That's always a good game. If Gryffindor won, they would have moved up into second place in the house championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play before. Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing Seeker had leaked out somehow, I imagine it would. And Harry didn't know which was worse, people telling him he'd be brilliant or people telling him they'd be running around underneath him holding a mattress. Now, if you know what's going to happen at this Quidditch match, that probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. It was really lucky that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. Yes, they're friends now. And became friends in the last chapter when Hermione covered for them. He didn't know how he'd gotten through all his homework without her. What with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making them do. So she had also lent him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. It's actually Harry's favorite textbook, Quidditch Through the Ages. I've read it like 2 or 3 times. It's an actual textbook that you can get. Not my favorite thing ever, but I'm not as into sports as Harry is, so I prefer Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I was going to say something else. Oh, yeah, I was going to make a reference to a Harry Potter musical again. Well, what are you working on now? I'm writing your potions essay. Oh, we'll do that first, because that's due tomorrow. And Hermione's like, I'll help you prepare for the tournament. They're going to do a tournament in the play. And then Harry's like, well, you can help me do that now. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm doing your potions homework. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul, and that all of them had happened during a World Cup match in 1473, that Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and that most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them. That although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees have been known to vanish and turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. Little known fact there. I like to do Harry Potter trivia, and so it's good to know all these little details for those sort of things. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules since Harry and Ron had saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the 3 of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. That's not in the movie, the first one, but it's kind of featured in Deathly Hallows. That's why Ron's like, I love these little flames that Hermione makes. That's what it's in reference to. Oh, perfect. I thought my music was over. Not quite. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. I wanted to mention this. A few days ago was actually the anniversary, if you want to call it, of Alan Rickman's passing. About 5 years ago, a couple days ago, he passed. If you didn't know this, Alan Rickman passed. He was dealing with cancer. I don't know what kind of cancer, and I might even be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure that he was battling cancer, though. And so, yes, he has passed, and he'll be dearly missed. He is dearly missed. Will be. He is. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They were sure it wouldn't have been allowed, which doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyway. What's that you've got there, Potter? It was Quidditch Through the Ages, Harry showed him. Library books are not to be taken outside the school, said Snape. Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor. He just made that roll up, Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. Wonder what's wrong with his leg. It's important. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's important. Dunno, but I hope it's really hurting him, said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She would never let them copy. How will you learn? But by asking her to read it through, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch through the ages back, to take his mind off his nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Yeah. Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape if he could have it. Better you than me, they said together, but Harry had an idea that Snape wouldn't refuse if there were other teachers listening. He made his way down to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there? It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible sight met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside, alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was badly bloody and mangled. Filch was holding Snape's bandages. Hiding Snape bandages. Snape, what? Filch was handing Snape bandages. Okay. I was like, there's no apostrophe S at the end of Snape. What? What am I saying? Okay. Blasted thing, Snape was saying. How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once? And you have to admit that without like the bloody and mangled part and the bandages, it sounds a little shady. That's a fan fiction I do not want to read. Harry tried to shut the door quickly, but Potter! Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. Harry gulped. I just wondered if I could have my book back. Get out! Out! Harry left. Before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor, he sprinted back upstairs. Did you get it? Ron asked as Harry joined them. What's the matter? In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. You know what this means, he finished breathlessly. He tried to get past that three-headed dog at Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after whatever it's guarding. And I'd bet my broomstick he'd let the troll in, to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try and steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think all teachers are saints or something, snapped Ron. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's the dog guarding? Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly. But Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. We know he's not good at that. That's like an unintentional nod to Order of the Phoenix when Harry needs to empty his mind before bed so he doesn't have those scary Voldemort dreams. And yeah, it's just interesting that he tries that here. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in a few hours, but the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget.
You kind of like this guy, but when you can't decide between the fillet of fish or the Big Mac, and he says, "I'll get you both." Thank you.
Trying to get my music started again. The CD ended. Is it gonna play? There we go. Beautiful. Okay. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. The great hall was full of delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. You've got to eat some breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, wheedled Hermione. I'm not hungry. Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time he'd be walking onto the field. Harry, you need your strength, said Seamus Finnegan. Seekers are always the one who gets cobbled by the other team. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry, watching Seamus pile ketchup onto his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands, around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean, the West Ham fan, up in the top row. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner on one of the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said Potter for President, and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor line underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Isn't that neat? I think Dean does a lot of drawing, like later in the books. Like, it's never in the movies or anything. It's not even that big of a deal, but there's almost always like a banner, or at least there is in other instances in future books. So his talent is used quite often. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin would be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. "Okay, men," he said. "And women," said Chaser Angelina Johnson. "And women," Wood agreed. "This is it. The big one," said Fred Weasley. "The one we've all been waiting for," said George. We know Oliver's speech by heart," Fred told Harry. "We were on the team last year." Yes. The Weasley twins are in their 3rd year this year, and first years never make the house team, except for Harry. So they would have had to first join the team last year in their 2nd year. "Shut up, you two," said Wood. This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win, I know it." He glared at them all as if to say, "Or else." "Right, it's time. Good luck, all of you." Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room and, hoping his knees weren't going to give way, walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. "Now I want a nice, fair game. All of you," she said once they were all gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain Marcus Flint, a 6th year. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fluttering banner high above, flashing Potter for President over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. I'm going to move my camera a little bit down. I want you to see my prefix badge. A totally dope prefix badge. I have my Horcrux necklace on today. Tied to her earrings. I got a whole bunch of I'm all over the place in terms of books, which book I'm representing. Mount your brooms, please. Harry clambered onto his Nibs 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. Madame Hooch gave... Oh, I just read that. 15 brooms rose up, high to the air. They were off. And the quaffle was taken immediately by Angelina Johnson, of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive, too. Jordan... Sorry, Professor. The Weasley twins' friend Lee Jordan was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. This is really good storytelling, in that J.K. Rowling is telling how the Quidditch match is going by way of Lee Jordan, the announcer. Because it's really hard and sort of uninteresting to just describe everything that's going on. You'd rather have somebody who's there directly tell you what's going on sometimes. I just read that. And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alicia Spinnet. A good find of Oliver Woods. Last year, only a reserve. Back to Johnson, and... No, the Slytherins have taken the quaffle. Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle, and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to... No. Stopped by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood, and the Gryffindors take the quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around. Flint off up the field, and... Ouch! That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by the Slytherins. That's Adrian Pusey, speeding off toward the goalposts, but he's blocked by a second bludger, sent his way by Fred and George Weasley. Fred or George Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beta, anyway, and Johnson back in possession of the quaffle. A clear field ahead, and off she goes. She's really flying. Dodges a speeding bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper Belchley dives. Misses. Gryffindor score! Gryffindor cheers fill the cold air with howls and moans from the Slytherins. Budge up there, move along. Hagrid! Ron and Hermione squeezed together to find Hagrid enough space to join them. Been watching from me hut, said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Keep out of trouble, though, that's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of the snitch. This was part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch, Wood had said. We don't want you attacked before you have to be. When Angelina had scored, Harry had done a couple of loop-the-loops to let off his feelings. Now he was back to staring around for the snitch. Once he caught sight of a flash of gold, but it was just a reflection from one of the Weasleys' wristwatches, and once a bludger decided to come pelting his way, more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged it, and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. All right there, Harry, he had time to yell as he beat the bludger furiously toward Marcus Flint. Slytherin in possession, Lee Jordan was saying. Chaser Pusey ducked 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, and Chaser Bell, and speeds toward the... Wait a minute. Was that the snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian Pusey dropped the quaffle, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flash of gold that had passed his left ear. Harry saw it. In a great rush of excitement, he dived downward after the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terrence Higgs had seen it, too. Neck and neck they hurtled toward the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung in midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He could see the little round ball, wings fluttering, darting up ahead. He put on an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off course, Harry holding on for dear life. Foul! Screamed the Gryffindors. Madam Hooch spoke angrily to Flint, and then ordered a free shot at the goalpost for Gryffindor. But in all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, "Send him off! Ref! Red card!" "What are you talking about, Dean?" said Ron. "Red card," said Dean fiercely. "In soccer, you get shown the red card, and you're out of the game." "But this isn't soccer, Dean," Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. "They ought to change the rules. Flint could have knocked Harry out of the air." Lee Jordan was finding it difficult not to take sides. "So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan," growled Professor McGonagall. After that open and revolting foul, Jordan, I'm warning you." All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor Seeker, which could have happened to anyone. I'm sure, so a penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinnet, who puts it away no trouble, and we continue play. Gryffindor still in possession." It was as if Harry dodged another bludger, which went spinning dangerously past his head, that had happened. No, it was as Harry dodged another bludger, which was spinning dangerously past his head, that had happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly with both his hands and knees. He'd never felt anything like that. It happened again. It was as though the broom was trying to buck him off. But Nimbus 2000s did not suddenly decide to buck their riders off. Harry tried to turn back toward the Gryffindor goalposts. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call time out, and then he realized that his broom was completely out of his control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air and every now and then making violent, swishing movements that almost unseated him. Lee was still commentating. "Slytherin in possession. Flint with a quaffle. Passes Spinnet. Passes Bell. Hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor. Slytherin scored. I say he lost control of his broom." "But he can't have." Suddenly people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. His broom had started to roll over and over, with him only just managing to hold on. Then the whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given a wild jerk, and Harry swung off it. He was now dangling from it, holding on with only one hand. I'm going to take a drink. "Did something happen to it when Flint blocked him?" Seamus whispered. "Can't have," Hagrid said, his voice shaking. Can't nothing interfere with the broomstick except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At these words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars, but instead of looking up at Harry, she stared looking frantically at the crowd. She's so smart. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, grey-faced. I knew it, Hermione gasped. Snape, look! Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of the stands opposite them. He had his eyes fixed on Harry and was muttering non-stop under his breath. He's doing something. Jinxing the broom, said Hermione. What should we do? Leave it to me. Before Ron could say another word, Hermione had disappeared. Ron turned the binoculars back on Harry. His broom was vibrating so hard it was almost impossible for him to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on its feet, watching, terrified, as the Weasleys flew up to try and pull Harry safely onto one of their brooms, but it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would jump higher still. They dropped lower and circled beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone noticing. Come on, Hermione, Ron muttered desperately. Hermione had fought her way across to the stand where Snape stood, and was now racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell headfirst into the row in front. Very important detail if you know who the real culprit is. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulling out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Oh. Bright blue flames shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. Okay, so I made a note here in the margin. That's why JKR made sure he didn't see the flames earlier. So she made sure that they hid the flames from Snape earlier so that Snape wouldn't know that it was Hermione that set flames to his robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him in a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape could never know what had happened. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back onto his broom. Neville, you can look, Ron said. Neville had been sobbing into Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding toward the ground when the crowd saw him clap his hand to his mouth as though he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. It's a lot less dramatic in the book. The movie does it better. This is one of those instances where the movie does it better. I've got the snitch! He shouted, waving it above his head as the game ended in complete confusion. He didn't catch it. He nearly swallowed it. Flint was still howling 20 minutes later, but it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any rules, and Lee Jordan was still happily shouting the results. Gryffindor had won by 170 points to 60. Harry heard none of this, though. He was being made a cup of strong tea back in Hagrid's hut with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing a broomstick, muttering. He wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what had gone on next to him in the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided on the truth. I found out something about him, he told Hagrid. He tried to get past that 3-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? He said. Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. Bought him off of a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the... Yes, said Harry eagerly. Now don't ask me any more, said Hagrid gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He'd do nothing of the sort. So why did he just try and kill Harry? Cried Hermione.
This guy, but when you can't decide between a fillet of fish or the big Mac.
The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact. And Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, said Hagrid hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom acted like that. And Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, all 3 of you. You're meddling in things that don't concern you. It's dangerous. You forget that dog, and you forget what it's guarding. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha! Said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. I should not have said that. I should not have said that. Okay, so it's actually a little early. That's the end of the chapter. It's cheerful music. That chapter felt kind of short. I've only been streaming for about 30 minutes. Technically 45, if you count my intermission screen. 30 minutes. So maybe I won't do an intermission. I will just continue because I do have my story to tell you guys, and that might take a little bit. It's a long story. I will continue then. Chapter 12, The Mirror of Erised. Now pay very close attention to this chapter. It's very important. Not just important for the story, like important for life lessons, things to glean from the text to use in your everyday life. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Okay, so imagine this for a minute. That's Voldemort at the back of Quirrell's head. The Weasley twins are bouncing snowballs off of Voldemort's face. That's funny. Wow. And I don't even mark it in here either. I'm gonna mark that. Okay. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holidays to start. While the Gryffindor common room and the Great Hall had roaring fires, the drafty corridors had become icy, and a bitter wind rattled the windows in the classrooms. Worst of all were Professor Snape's classes down in the dungeons, where their breath rose in a mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. I do feel so sorry, said Draco Malfoy, one potions class, for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted at home. He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored him. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that the Slytherins had lost, he had tried to get everyone laughing at how a wide-mouthed tree frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he'd realized that nobody found this funny, because they were all so impressed at the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't going back to Privet Drive for Christmas. I'm sure he doesn't care. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before, making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would probably be the best Christmas he ever had. Yeah, it will be. Ron and his brothers were staying too close. Ron and his brothers were staying too because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet sticking out at the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. "Nah, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts, I suppose. That head of Hagrid's must be must seem like a palace compared to what your family's used to. No one likes you anyway. Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. Weasley. Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. He was provoked, Professor Snape, said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind the tree. Malfoy was insulting his family. Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid, said Snape silkily. Have we ever heard Snape use Hagrid's name in the movies? I don't think so. I can't imagine how he'd say it. I don't know. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley. And be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. I'll get him, said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. One of these days, I'll get him. I hate them both, said Harry. Malfoy and Snape. Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas, said Hagrid. Tell you what, come with me and see the Great Hall. Looks a treat. So the three of them followed Hagrid and his tree off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. Ah, Hagrid, the last tree. Put it in the far corner, would you? The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. How many days you got left until your holidays? Hagrid asked. Just one, said Hermione. And that reminds me. Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library. Oh yeah, you're right, said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand, and was trailing them over the branches of the new tree. The library, said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holidays? Bit keen, aren't you? Oh, we're not working, Harry told him brightly. Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. Thanks, Hagrid! You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here. I've told you. Drop it. It's nothing to do with what that dog's guarding. It's not true, is it, Hagrid? It's not true. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know we've read his name somewhere. You have. Does anybody remember where he read about Nicholas Flamel? He read about it on the Chocolate Frogs card that he got on the train. Dumbledore's card. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves, then, said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching books for Flamel's name ever since Hagrid had let it slip, because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself into a book. He wasn't in Great Wizards of the 20th century. No, you won't find him there. Or notable magical names of our time. Again, you wouldn't find him there either. It's not in your time at all. Was missing, too, from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. She did this on purpose. I wrote a note in the book. She did this on purpose. She had them purposefully look for books with titles having to do with recent achievements. It's not recent at all. He's 665 so, at the time of this book. So it was, a good while ago. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. They really could use a wizard search engine. It's actually something, that's a joke that Call Me Kevin makes when he's playing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the video game. And they're trying to look up something in the library. He says, you could use a wizard Google. You could call it Woogle. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search, while Ron strode off down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelves at random. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you needed a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look in any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts, and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. "What are you looking for, boy?" "Nothing," said Harry. Madam Pince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. "You'd better get out, then. Go on, out!" Yeah. I made a note in the margin that says, "Sounds like you guys need a computer." Yeah, I just talked about that. Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they'd better not ask Madame Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside in the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They'd been looking for 2 weeks, after all, but as they only had odd moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they'd found nothing. I find it interesting that Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they're sometimes referred to as the Golden Trio in Harry Potter circles, so I will sometimes call them the Golden Trio. That they automatically suspect that Snape cursed the broomstick, but they don't tell anybody. They talk to Hagrid about it, but not because he'll do something about it, because he was there and they were just talking about it. But they don't seem to get help from anybody. They want to solve their own problems, which is really interesting. They don't go tell Dumbledore about it. They decide to figure things out for themselves. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madame Pince breathing down their necks. Or a computer, is what I put at the bottom. Or the internet. The internet wasn't really a thing. What was this? Yeah, I mean, it is, but I mean, it's not quite what it is now. This is 1990s. 1996 or 1995? 1996? Yeah. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads. They were off to lunch. "You'll keep looking while I'm away, won't you?" said Hermione. "And send me an owl if you find anything." "And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is," said Ron. "It'd be safe to ask them. Very safe, as they're both dentists," said Hermione. I absolutely love that they included that in the movie Half-Blood Prince, where Hermione talks about how our parents are dentists. My parents are dentists. And then there's jokes about that too in a Harry Potter musical. "We can't play sports. My parents say that sports are bad for your teeth." Oh, okay. I'm just reading my notes here. Once the holidays had started, Ron and Harry were having too good a time to think much about Flamel. They had the dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. Now, I wrote down that upperclassmen usually get the armchairs. I know this because the trio sit in them in later books. So here, they never sit in the armchairs because they're first years, but you'll notice in the 5th one, 6th one, and 7th one, the trio are often sitting in the armchairs because they're upperclassmen by that point. They sat by the hour eating anything they could spare on a toasting fork, bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk about even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This was exactly like Muggle chess, except the figures were alive, which made it a lot like directing troops in battle. It's like playing chess online, or virtually, actually. If you ever feel like playing a Harry Potter video game,
Been thinking about coming back to Spotify Premium. Now that's a great idea.
and I highly recommend the Order of the Phoenix game, because there's so much exploring you can do in the castle, and there's so much extra stuff you can do apart from the story that you don't really get in other Harry Potter games. And you get to play wizard's chess, and what you do is you compete against all of the champions in each house. And I think the hardest champion is the one in Slytherin. And it's so fun playing wizard's chess. It's like it's playing real chess, but I mean, like, the pieces actually move and fight each other. And it's great. I love it. I love playing wizard's chess in that game. Ron's set was very old and battered. Like everything else he owned, it had once belonged to someone else in his family. In this case, his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. Harry played with chessmen Seamus Finnegan had lent him. Seamus's chess sets? Why doesn't Ron have a full chess set? With, like, both sides? And they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there. Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can afford to lose him. Can you imagine chess pieces telling you what to do? On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any presents at all. When he woke early in the morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron, sleepily, as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled on his bathrobe. "You too," said Harry. "Will you look at this? I've got some presents." "What did you expect, turnips?" said Ron, turning to his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was "To Harry, from Hagrid." Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Very important for later. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Isn't that beautiful? Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. A second, very small parcel contained a note. "We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia." Taped to the note was a 50-pence piece. Thanks? What message? Why send anything at all? That's what I wrote. That's friendly, said Harry. "We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present." I guess maybe Harry told them, "Hey, I'm not coming," though you probably expected it. Maybe that's what he wrote. I don't know. Ron was fascinated by the 50-pence. "Weird," he said. "What a shape. This is money?" Yeah, I think the 50 pence is octagonal shape, I believe. I drew it here. It's not a very good drawing. You can't really see it. But, yeah, I drew it. That's what I wondered. I was like, weird shape, and I looked it up, and the 50-pence piece has, like, an octagonal shape. "You can keep it," said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. "Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. So who sent these?" "I think I know who that one's from," said Ron, turning a bit pink and pointing to a very lumpy parcel. "My mum. I told her you didn't expect any presents, and—" "Oh, no," he groaned. "She's made you a Weasley sweater." I would love a Weasley sweater. They should sell those. Does Noble Collection know? Somebody tell Noble Collection right now. Sell Weasley sweaters. I want one. Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater in emerald green and a large box of homemade fudge. "Every year she makes us a sweater," said Ron, unwrapping his own. "And mine's always maroon." He hates the color maroon. "That's really nice of her," said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present also contained candy, a large box of chocolate frocks from Hermione. This only left one parcel. Harry picked it up and felt it. It was very light. He unwrapped it. Something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor, where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. "Excuse me." "I've heard of those," he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavor beans he had gotten from Hermione. "If that's what I think it is. They're really rare and really valuable." "What is it?" Harry picked the shining, silvery cloth off the floor. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. "It's an invisibility cloak," said Ron, a look of awe on his face. "I'm sure it is. Try it on." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gave a yell. "It is! Look down!" Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him, just his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and his reflection vanished completely. "There's a note," said Ron suddenly. "A note fell out of it." Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before were the following words. "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." There's no signature. Harry stared at the note. Ron was admiring the cloak. Why did Dumbledore... Well, we do find out that this is Dumbledore who gave him the cloak. Why did Dumbledore have the invisibility cloak? Of course, we know now, but it was a question that J.K. Rowling always wondered why nobody ever asked her. And if they had asked, they would have hit on something very important. Why indeed did Dumbledore have the invisibility cloak in his possession when Harry's father died? It's because Dumbledore knew that it was a Deathly Hallow, and he was searching for them at the time. "I'd give anything for one of those," he said. "Anything. What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Harry. He felt very strange. Who had sent the cloak? Had it really once belonged to his father? It had. How did Harry's father come to own the invisibility cloak? It's been passed down for generations. It goes way back to Ignotus, I believe. Ignotus Peverell, one of the three brothers in the Deathly Hallows story. But we'll talk about that later when we get there. That's 6 books away. We're 6 books ahead of ourselves here. Before he could say or think anything else, the dormitory door was flung open, and Fred and George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quickly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else yet. "Merry Christmas." "Hey, look, Harry's got a Weasley sweater, too." Fred and George were wearing blue sweaters, one with a large yellow F on it, the other a G. "Harry's is better than ours, though," said Fred, holding up Harry's sweater. "She obviously makes more of an effort if you're not family." "Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron?" George demanded. "Come on, get it on. They're lovely and warm." "I hate maroon," Ron moaned half-heartedly as he pulled it over his head. "You haven't got a letter on yours," George observed. "I suppose she thinks you don't forget your name. But we're not stupid. We know we're called Gret and Forge." "Shut up." "What's all the noise?" Percy Weasley stuck his head through the door, looking disapproving. He'd clearly gotten halfway through unwrapping his presents, as he, too, carried a lumpy sweater over his arm, which Fred seized. "P for prefect." "Get it on, Percy. Come on, we're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one." "I don't want," said Percy thickly as the twins forced the sweater over his head, knocking his glasses askew. "And you're not sitting with the prefects today either," said George. "Christmas is a time for family." They frog-marched Percy from the room, his arms pinned to his side by his sweater. Harry had never in all his life had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkey. 100? Oh, geez. How many people are there? How many students stick around for the holidays? 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of chipolatas, tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. If you don't know what those are, it's an English tradition. They're like these tubes. You can get them in America. They actually sell them at the Christmas tree shop. They're like little tubes, and they have like tassels at the end, and you're supposed to pull them with somebody. You're supposed to one person holds one end and you hold the other, and you pull and it pops, and usually something comes out. In the wizarding world, it's usually more interesting than that, though, as you'll see. A stack of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. These fantastic party favors were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats inside. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon, and engulfed them all in a cloud of blue smoke, while from in the inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live white mice. Up at the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard's hat for a flowered bonnet, and was chuckling merrily at a joke Professor Flitwick had just read him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his teeth on a silver sickle embedded in his slice. What? Harry watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face as he was called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed, her top hat lopsided. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of the crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons, a grow-your-own warts kit, and his own new wizard's chess set. Isn't that awesome to get a whole chess set out of a cracker? Oh my goodness. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up as Mrs. Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight on the grounds. Then, cold, wet, and gasping for breath, they returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke in his chess set, by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After a meal of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy to do much before bed except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over Gryffindor Tower because they'd stolen his prefect badge. It's nice that Ron has something, going for him. It's really nice that Ron's good at chess. It's good that he's good at something. It's a nice touch. It had been Harry's best Christmas day ever. Yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into bed was he free to think about it, the invisibility cloak, and whoever had sent it. Ron, full of turkey and cake and with nothing mysterious to bother him, fell asleep. Almost as soon as he'd drawn the curtains of his four-poster, Harry leaned over the side of his own bed and pulled the cloak out from under it. His father's. This had been his father's. He let the material flow over his hands, smoother than silk, light as air. Use it well, the note had said. He had to try it now. He slipped out of bed and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his legs, he saw only moonlight and shadows. It was a very funny feeling. Use it well. Suddenly, Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him in this cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood there in the dark and silence. He could go anywhere in this, anywhere, and Filch would never know. Awesome. Enjoy your vacuuming, Julia. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something held him back. His father's cloak. He felt that this time, the first time, he wanted to use it alone. He crept out of the dormitory, down the stairs, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. "Who's there?" squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked quickly down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing, and thought, and then it came to him. The restricted section, in the library. He'd be able to read as long as he liked, as long as it took to find out who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his own way along the rows of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating along in midair, and even though Harry could feel his arms supporting it, the sight gave him the creeps. The restricted section was right at the back of the library. Stepping carefully over the rope that separated these books from the rest of the library, he held up his lamp to read the titles. They didn't tell him much. Their peeling, faded gold letters spelled words in languages Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had a dark stain on it that looked horribly like blood. The hairs on the back of Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it, maybe not, but he thought a faint whispering was coming from the books, as though they knew someone was there who shouldn't be. He had to start somewhere. Setting the lamp down carefully on the floor, he looked along the bottom shelf for an interesting-looking book. A large black and silver volume caught his eye. He pulled it out with difficulty, because it was very heavy, and balancing it on his knees, let it fall open. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming. Harry snapped it shut, but the shriek went on and on. one high, unbroken, ear-splitting note. He stumbled backward and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once.
When it comes to my favorite TV shows, I've got a lot to say. So much that I've been
Panicking, he heard footsteps coming down the corridor outside. Stuffing the shrieking book back on the shelf, he ran for it. He passed Filch in the doorway. Filch's pale, wild eyes looked straight through him, and Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and streaked off up the corridor, the book's shrieks still ringing in his ears. He came to a sudden halt in front of a tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps because it was dark, he didn't notice where he was at all. No, he didn't recognize where he was at all. There was a suit of armor near the kitchens, he knew, but he must be 5 floors above there. You asked me to come directly to you, Professor, if anyone was wandering around at night, and somebody's been in the library, restricted section. Harry felt the blood drain out of his face. Wherever he was, Filch must have known a shortcut. He does. There's only one other person who knows all of the secret passageways in the castle, except Fred and George Weasley, and that is Filch. Because his soft, greasy voice was getting nearer, and to his horror, it was Snape who replied, "The restricted section. Well, they can't be far. We'll catch them." Harry stood rooted to the spot as Filch and Snape came around the corner ahead. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was a narrow corridor, and if they came much nearer, they'd knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as quietly as he could. A door stood ajar to his left. It was his only hope. He squeezed through it, holding his breath, trying not to move it, and to his relief he managed to get inside the room without their noticing anything. They walked straight past, and Harry leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, listening to their footsteps dying away. That had been close, very close. It was a few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like an unused classroom. The dark shapes of the desk and chairs were piled against the walls, and there was an upturned waste paper basket. But propped against the wall, facing him, was something that didn't look as if it belonged there. Something that looked as if someone had just put it there to keep it out of the way. It was a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold flame, standing on 2 clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top. Erised, Stra, Eru, Ot, Ube, Kafru, Oit, on Wahisi. Alright, so if you don't know this, if you take these words and you flip them, and you separate them to create words, you'll see that it's a secret message that says, "I show not your face, but your heart's desire." I figured that out all myself, actually. In a car ride, probably we were moving, and I was reading this book for maybe like the 4th time, and I was just looking at it, and I was like, I wonder if it's a secret message, because I'd actually been reading a lot of extra text. I've been reading the unofficial guide to Harry Potter, and they were talking a lot about how J.K. Rowling puts a lot of hidden messages in her books, and that's one of them. And so I actually figured that one out for myself. It's not super hard to find if you are used to solving puzzles and riddles and stuff that like I am. So it's just an interesting secret message that you can find there. His panic fading now that there was no sound of Filch and Snape, Harry moved nearer to the mirror, wanting to look at himself, but seeing no reflection again. He stepped in front of it. He had to clap his hands to his mouth to stop himself from screaming. He whirled around. His heart was pounding far more furiously than when the book had screamed, for he had not seen only himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. But the room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it, white and scared looking, and there, reflected behind him, were at least 10 others. Harry looked over his shoulder, but still, no one was there. Or were they all invisible too? Was he in fact in a room full of invisible people, and this mirror's trick was that it reflected them, invisible or not? He looked in the mirror again. A woman standing right behind him. His reflection was smiling at him and waving. He reached out a hand and felt the air behind him. If she was really there, he'd touch her. The reflections were so close together, but he'd felt only air. She and the others existed only in the mirror. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair, and her eyes are just like mine, Harry thought, edging a little closer to the glass. Bright green, exactly the same shape, but then he noticed that she was crying, smiling, but crying at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses, and his hair was very untidy, stuck up at the back, just as Harry's did. Harry was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching that of his reflection. "Mom," he whispered. "Dad?" They just looked at him, smiling, and slowly Harry looked into the faces of the other people in the mirror and saw other pairs of green eyes like his, their noses like his, even a little old man who looked as though he had Harry's knobbly knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potter smiled and waved at Harry as he stared hungrily back at them, his hands pressed flat against the glass, as though he was hoping to fall right through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there, he didn't know. The reflections did not fade, and he looked and looked until a distant noise brought him back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother's face, whispered, "I'll come back," and he hurried from the room. "You could have woken me up," said Ron crossly. "You can come tonight. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror." "I'd like to see your Mom and Dad," Ron said eagerly. "And I want to see your whole family, all the Weasleys. You'll be able to show me your brothers and everyone." "You can see them any old time," said Ron. "Just come round my house this summer. Anyway, maybe it only shows dead people. Shame about not finding Flamel, though. Have some bacon or something." "Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen his parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important anymore. Who cared what the three-headed dog was guarding? What did it matter if Snape stole it, really? "Are you all right?" said Ron. "You look odd." It's very important, and I will tell you my story when we end the chapter. What Harry feared most was that he might not be able to find the mirror room again. With Ron covered in the cloak, too, they had to walk much more slowly the next night. They tried retracing Harry's route from the library, wandering around the dark passageways for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing," said Ron. "Let's forget it and go back." "No," Harry hissed. "I know it's here somewhere." They passed the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but saw no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead with cold, Harry spotted the suit of armor. "It's here. Just here." "Yes!" They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around his shoulders and ran to the mirror. There they were. His mother and father beamed at the sight of him. "See?" Harry whispered. "I can't see anything. Look at them all. There are loads of them. I can only see you." "Look in it properly. Go on, stand where I am." Harry stepped aside, but with Ron in front of the mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore. Just Ron in his paisley pajamas. Ron, though, was staring transfixed at his image. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all your family standing around you?" "No. I'm alone. But I'm different. I look older. And I'm head boy." "What?" "I am. I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to. And I'm holding the house cup with the Quidditch cup. I'm Quidditch captain, too." Ron tore his eyes away from this splendid sight to look excitedly at Harry. "Do you think this mirror shows the future?" "How can it? All my family are dead." "Let me have another look. You've had it to yourself all last night. Give me a bit more time. You're only holding the Quidditch cup. What's interesting about that? I want to see my parents. Don't push me." A sudden noise outside in the corridor put an end to their discussion. They hadn't realized how loudly they'd been talking. "Quick!" Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes of Mrs. Norris came round the door. Ron and Harry stood quite still, both thinking the same thing. Did the cloak work on cats? After what seemed an age, she turned and left. This isn't safe. She might have gone for Filch. I bet she heard us. Come on. And Ron pulled Harry out of the room. See, Harry has to be pulled away from this mirror. There's other notes that I've left too, actually. We'll talk about it. Sorry if you can hear that. Noise is going on outside. I think somebody's salting the road because we're having a wintry weather here. He stares hungrily at the mirror. He has a powerful kind of ache inside him to see this mirror. Notice how he doesn't care about Flamel anymore. He doesn't care about finding the stone anymore. He doesn't care what Snape does. He's suddenly agitated. He doesn't eat. He's very agitated with Ron. All of a sudden, he's arguing with Ron. Arguing over who gets to see themselves in the mirror. The snow still hadn't melted the next morning. Want to play chess, Harry? Said Ron. No. Why don't we go down and visit Hagrid? No. You go. I know what you're thinking about, Harry. That mirror. Don't go back tonight. Why not? I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about it. And anyway, you've had too many close shaves already. Filch, Snape, and Mrs. Norris are wandering around. So what if they can't see you? What if they walk into you? What if you knock something over? You sound like Hermione. I'm serious, Harry. Don't go. But Harry only had one thought in his head, which was to get back in front of the mirror, and Ron wasn't going to stop him. The third night had found his way more quickly than before. He was walking so fast he knew he was making more noise than was wise. But he didn't meet anyone. And there were his mother and father smiling at him again, and one of his grandfathers nodding happily. Harry sank down to sit on the floor in front of the mirror. There was nothing to stop him from staying here all night with his family. Nothing at all. Except, back again, Harry. Harry felt as though his insides had turned to ice. He looked behind him. Sitting on one of the desks by the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Harry must have walked straight past him, so desperate to get to the mirror he hadn't noticed him. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, said Dumbledore, and Harry was relieved to see that he was smiling. So, said Dumbledore, slipping off the desk to sit on the floor with Harry, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erised. I didn't know it was called that, sir, but I expect you realize by now what it does. It shows me my family, and it showed your friend Ron himself as head boy. How did you know? I don't need a cloak to become invisible, said Dumbledore gently, which also begs the question, why did Dumbledore have the invisibility cloak if he doesn't even need it? As we find out, it's because it's a Deathly Hallow object. Harry shook his head. Let me explain. The happiest man on earth would be able to use this Mirror of Erised like a normal mirror. That is, he would look into it and see himself exactly as he is. Does that help? Harry thought. Then he said slowly, it shows us what we want. Whatever we want. Yes. And no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desires of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ronald Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brothers, sees himself standing alone, the best of all of them. However, this mirror will give us neither knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you'll now be prepared. It does not do to dwell in dreams and forget to live. Remember that. Now why don't you put on that admirable cloak back on and get off to bed? Harry stood up. Sir, Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something? Obviously you've just done so. Dumbledore smiled. You may ask me one more thing, however. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. Harry stared. One can never have enough socks, said Dumbledore. Another Christmas has come and gone, and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. It was only when he was back in bed that it struck Harry that Dumbledore might not have been quite truthful. But then he thought as he shoved Scabbers off his pillow, it had been quite a personal question. We know what Dumbledore saw. We know now, don't we? Or we can guess. And now I'm going to share a personal testimony with you concerning the Mirror of Erised. It's such a perfect example of what I'm going to talk about. I've had a similar experience, at least allegorically. Yeah, so get comfortable. It's quite a story. Okay. It does not do to dwell in dreams, Harry, and forget to live. That's what Dumbledore says to Harry in the movie, and close to what he says in the book. So if you notice, when Harry found himself in front of the mirror, it suddenly became his whole world. It suddenly became everything that he wanted, all he could think about. Suddenly, it was the first thing he thought of when he woke up. It was the last thing he thought of when he went to sleep. It was all he could think about. He didn't care about eating, and he completely mistreated Ron, and he completely forgot about getting caught. He was no longer cared about getting into trouble, and he wanted to spend as much time as possible in front of this mirror, and he didn't care about Nicholas Flamel anymore. He didn't care about fighting evil anymore. It's essentially what that was. Harry didn't want to live in reality. This is a perfect example of what is called escapism, where you can't handle your real life, and so you find any way you can to escape it by losing yourself in anything. And in this case, for Harry, it was the idea that he had parents. He didn't want to fight anymore. He just wanted to sit in front of that mirror and pretend to live in a world where he had parents. And as we know, bad things happen because good people choose to do nothing, and Harry was choosing to do nothing. Harry Potter was my Mirror of Erised growing up. I want to explain a few things before I get too far into this. I don't know exactly who my audience is. Some of you might be Christians and some of you might not. I'm going to explain a few things just so that we're all on the same page. I'm going to come out and say it. I am a Christian. That is my religion. I don't hide it. I'm very authentic. I want to be real about what I believe. And I don't want to force my beliefs on anybody. I'm just going to come out and say that. If you don't believe the way that I do, you're still welcome here. You're welcome to watch all my videos, all my streams. You're always welcome. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want to force my beliefs on anybody. I'm just here to tell you my story. I'm just here to tell you what I've experienced and what I believe, what I believe to be true. And this is what I have. This is my story. I encourage always everyone to share their stories. It is the most precious thing that you have, and this is mine. If you saw my first video, my first stream ever, actually, I talked about why the word phoenix is in my YouTube name. It's because I associate myself with the phoenix, and how the special powers that phoenixes have is they have the ability to sing and give courage to those pure in heart. And that's what I want to do. My story is my phoenix song. And so here it is. I am a Christian, and what that means is that I am a follower of Christ. There's some confusion out there as to what Christianity actually is. They think it means reading the Bible and going to church, and it involves those things, certainly, but the core of Christianity is to follow the practices of Christ. It's to model your life after Christ. It doesn't mean literally doing exactly what he did, waking up at the same time he did, and wearing the same clothes he did, having the same profession. It means to follow the teachings after Christ, to become like him in spirit, to worship God the way he worshipped God, essentially. So that belief dictates the decisions that I made in this story. I'm also going to explain something about Christianity. In our attempt to follow Christ, we come after what is called idols. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Bible, idols were things way back in olden days, in Bible times. They were statues or poles or items or altars that were erected, usually made out of wood or stone or anything really, that were worshipped as gods in return for things like a good harvest or the ability to produce offspring, whatever they wanted, whatever they thought was valuable at the time. While we might not see statue worship quite so much these days, there is still some of it. We believe that idols still exist. They just look a little different. Idols are anything that you worship that's not God, essentially. That is essentially bare bones what it is. It can be anything that you worship that's not God. That's an idol. And idols can be, let me explain worship first. Worship isn't just singing to something or praying to something. It's also where you abide. Worship is where you place your heart. Where you go to, it's the thing you go to when you're happy, when you're sad, for comfort, for stability, the thing that dictates your decisions, the thing that rules over you, that consumes your life. That's the thing that you worship. And idols can look like anything. An easy example of idolatry is drugs. Really easy example. Drug addictions, it's when you have a drug addiction, that drug is all you think about. It's the first thing you think about when you get up. It's the last thing you think about when you go to sleep. It's you spend all your money, all your time, all your energy in trying to get your next fix. So it's where you go when you're happy, when you're sad, for comfort, for stability. Drugs consume your whole being, your whole life. It changes your thinking. It changes your morality. If you didn't lie, cheat, or steal, or kill before, you would now for these drugs, for this one thing. And it doesn't have to be drugs. Idols can be anything. It can be alcohol or pornography. Those are pretty common these days. But it doesn't even have to be, it could be good things too. It can be a person. It can be your family members. It could be your spouse or your children or your desire for a spouse or children. It could be a job title. It can be anything. It could be, or even your favorite books, movies, music, or games. It could be video games in general. How do you know if it's an idol? As I've illustrated this too. It's the first thing you think of when you get up. It's the last thing you think of when you go to sleep. Is it all you think about? Is it in everything that you do? Are you able to make time for anything else? do you sacrifice your morals for it? You know, if you don't normally, if there's something that you would never ever do, but you would bend the rules for this particular thing. But also, you know, if you have to really sit down and think about it, then probably not, because deep down, you know when you're unhealthily involved in something because you can't deal with reality. I will also explain this other concept very loosely, and that's the Holy Spirit. Now, when you're a Christian and you accept Jesus Christ as Lord of your life, you receive something called the Holy Spirit. We don't just believe that Jesus is up in heaven with God. He certainly is, but he's also here on earth within us by way of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is how we communicate with God. Essentially, it's who listens to our prayers and communicates them to God, essentially. I know it sounds a little nuts. If you're not Christian, this sounds absolutely bonkers to you, I'm sure. Just go with it, because we don't even really understand it sometimes. It's one of those things where you have to experience it to understand it. The Bible says that it sounds nuts to people who don't believe, so I understand. Just go with it. But these are things that you need to know so that you understand my story, so you understand why I made the choices that I did. Because honestly, you can be involved in good things, like your favorite books, movies, games, whatever. There are some idols that you really should get rid of, whether you're a Christian or not, like drug addiction, alcohol, pornography. Those are things that are actually damaging to you and your relationships and are no good at all, so you should just get rid of them. Whereas Harry Potter, things like Harry Potter, there is good to them. And that you might think, well, if you spent all of your time and energy and whatever, your whole life into this thing, you're not hurting anybody. Yeah, okay, you're right. But this is a spiritual level. And so if you understand that I'm a Christian and that I believe these things, you understand that it would be harmful from my worldview. So idolatry, and I forget where I was going with that. Shoot. I was going somewhere with that. I wrote down my notes. I've practiced this like so many times. It'll make sense why I just wanted to make sure that you understand these important points about Christianity, so you understand why I did what I did. So what happens when we have idols in our lives is we need to tear them down. That's always what God said in the Bible to his people. Whenever they erected an idol, you need to take it down. Get rid of it, throw it into the fire. It is not good for you. It is not glorifying to God. Get rid of it. Okay? That's what you do with idols. So Harry Potter was my idol, as the Mirror of Erised was Harry's. Harry Potter was my escape, just like the Mirror of Erised was for Harry. I didn't realize how unhappy I was as a kid. I was alone a lot. I grew up in the military, so we moved around a lot. I couldn't make a lot of friends. It was hard for me to make friends already. It's to the point where I feel like it was like a disability, I feel like, to me. But I don't know. I didn't realize how unhappy I was with my life. So I didn't realize that I was trying to escape it. Also, I have an addictive personality. I have an obsessive personality. So when I like something, I really like it. And so I'm going to be dealing with this kind of thing for my entire life, pretty much. But anyway, let me explain to you how much Harry Potter was an idol for me. It was the first thing I thought of when I woke up. I had dreams about Harry Potter every single night. This is about high school age for me. I started reading Harry Potter in 4th grade, but became a really big deal by high school for me. So Harry Potter, I literally dreamt about Harry Potter every night. I know that sounds like an exaggeration. It isn't. I wrote down most of my dreams in my journal. They were all Harry Potter related. If it wasn't Harry Potter focused, Harry was in there somewhere. if not Harry, then Ron, then Hermione, or Dumbledore, or Voldemort, or somebody was in there in the background somewhere. Harry Potter was always involved with it somehow. I had lots of Harry Potter merchandise. It was all I ever spent my money on. I had every Harry Potter shirt you could have, essentially. I'd always walk into, Hot Topic and walk out with 5 Harry Potter shirts. Like, my mother got so irritated about waiting for me to pick one. She'd be like, just get them all. So I did. Every Wacky Wednesday for Spirit Week, I would always wear my Harry Potter uniform. I had the whole uniform. I had the cloak. I had the sweater. I had the scarf. The tie. I had a wand. I had my very own Alavans wand. Very cool. Very cool. You can get your own wand from Alavans. You can get the wood and the core. It's really cool. And I brought that around with me. Every Friday was Harry Potter Fridays, where I would wear my Harry Potter shirt, and I would wear my paraphernalia, is that what you call it? I would wear my Hogwarts tie, my Gryffindor tie, and I was known as the Harry Potter girl. That's who I was in high school. That's what everybody knew me as. If I wasn't reading Harry Potter, I was watching it. If I wasn't watching it, I was writing fan fiction for it. If I wasn't writing fan fiction for it, I was thinking about writing fan fiction for it. It was always in my thoughts, long car rides, on the bus. If I wasn't thinking about it, I was listening to it. I was listening to either the movie soundtracks, or I was listening to Wizard Rock on my iPod. It was literally everything that I did. If I wasn't doing that, I was drawing. I was drawing Harry Potter. I was drawing the characters, and I was drawing the scenes for my fan fictions that I wrote. If I wasn't doing that, I was on YouTube looking up all kinds of Harry Potter videos. I was looking up interviews. I was looking at deleted scenes and clips for the next one coming out. I was looking at Harry Potter WAVs, WAVs. Those are really good. Like, now the crackdown with, like, audio clips on YouTube has totally destroyed it, but man, back then it was funny, and I just loved it, and I did that for hours and hours. I'd be up till 4 a.m. doing that. It consumed my whole life, and I just want to come out and say that there are things in your life that are good, and if you love them so much that you're spending all night doing them, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's not a good video game unless you're playing it till 4 a.m. That's just my opinion. Like, because you do something a lot, because you like something a lot, doesn't automatically mean that it's bad for you, that it's an idol. It's where you abide. It's where you place your heart, remember. And I'll explain how I placed my heart in Harry Potter here. I should have realized it was a problem because people were coming to me and telling me that I had a problem. A good friend of mine named Lucretia in high school, we actually had differing ideas on religion. We had different religious affiliations. And she came to me and she said, Erica, maybe you should take a break from Harry Potter. Something's not right in your spirit. And like we tried to avoid talking about religion because of our differences, and I'm just like, why is she telling me this? But I ignored it, as Harry ignores Ron, I ignored her. It wasn't just her either. I've had other people tell me as well. The thing is, I was growing up in my faith at the time. I was attending church, and I was going to youth group, and I was learning about idols and what they were. And, and that's when I learned that the things you worship are the things where you go to when you're happy, when you're sad, where you go for your comfort and stability and all those things I listed before. And so I started to figure out, that's Harry Potter for me. And it started to freak me out a little bit because what do you do with idols? You're supposed to tear them down. You're supposed to get rid of them. And I couldn't imagine a world without Harry Potter. I couldn't do it. I couldn't even think about it. It was unthinkable. So I just avoided the topic usually. I just pretended like it wasn't a thing. And I would talk to my parents about it, like, because I felt guilty in my spirit. I'd be like, something's not right. Like, I had to deal with the problem. I went to my parents like several times and told them, hey, like, is Harry Potter an issue? Like, is it okay for me to like Harry Potter and to spend so much time with it? My parents always said the same thing. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You're a kid. Have fun. Live your life. Essentially, it was do whatever you want to do. Because somewhere along the line, I learned incorrectly that God wants you to be happy. I don't know where I learned that, but that is absolutely false. I'm here to tell you, like, I hate, like, it bothers me. Like, I mean, like, I'm not against Vacation Bible School or anything like that, but I feel like when these kids, and they tell these kids to dedicate their life to the Lord, they don't know what they're doing. Like, they're not stressing the fact that it's hard. It means you're giving up something. It's not easy. It's a fight. And I don't know, just somewhere along the way, we think that God exists to make us happy, that he's some benevolent being in the sky, some genie that we can wish for things and he gives them to us or doesn't for whatever reason. And that's just not true. We're under the delusion that God is here to make us happy, and that's absolutely not true. And so that's why I refused to get rid of Harry Potter. I was like, there's no way that God wants me to do this because God's a good guy. Because if God is so good, he wouldn't want me to get rid of something that makes me happy. But the fact is, we know that's not true. If you read the Bible, you know there's several instances where God tells his people to do things that seem counterintuitive. If you don't know, there's a story about Abraham. Abraham was promised a son in his old age. It's something that he desperately wanted. And finally, God gave it to him. God said, I will give you a son. And he did. And Abraham absolutely loved his son. Until one day, God said to Abraham, I want you to go to the top of Mount Horon. I think it was Mount Horon. And I want you to sacrifice your son to me. And that sounds really bad. That sounds like something awful. Like, if God is so good, why would he ask Abraham to do that? You have to remember, this is the God that also sent his own son to die for our sins. What kind of father would do that, right? God does a lot of things that we don't understand. I'm not here to make God look like a good guy. Like, I'm not. Like, God says he's good, and I trust that. But I admit, he does some things that don't look good. I agree with that. I don't have all the answers. I'm not here to make God look good. I'm not here to try to sell him to you because he doesn't need it. Like, he's a lion. He doesn't need me to defend him. He's free to do whatever he wants, and he's God, okay? So he's going to do whatever he wants to do, and it's not going to make sense to us because we're not God. Trying to understand God and what he does is like an ant trying to understand space, okay? He sees rain coming down from the sky, and that's all he knows. He doesn't know what's beyond it. He is incapable of understanding. And so, of course, God is going to do things that we don't understand because the moment we understand God completely is the moment he ceases to be God. But Abraham decides to go up on that mountain and sacrifice Isaac, his son, because he trusted God, because he trusted in his being that God was good. So he goes up the mountain in obedience. But here's the end of the story. Just as Abraham is about to sacrifice Isaac on the altar to God, God says, stop. God sends an angel and says, you passed the test. Don't sacrifice your son. We'll sacrifice this ram here instead. God wanted to make sure that Abraham was completely devoted to him by showing him with this sacrifice. So, God wants us to be happy, but he wants us to be truly happy. He wants us to be what we were created to be, not this fake universe that we build up around us because we want to escape our reality. He wants you to be happy, but not at the cost of your comfort. Not at the cost of your salvation or your safety or your health. You understand? Happiness is important to God, but it's not the most important thing. But it is certainly part of the ultimate goal. So I really wrestled with getting rid of all my Harry Potter stuff. You have to realize it was a lot of stuff. Okay? My walls were painted gold and scarlet for Gryffindor colors. I had my walls completely covered in Harry Potter posters. Well, no, that's not true. Mostly Harry Potter. One wall entirely was dedicated to Harry Potter, and like the one next to it was like dedicated to Daniel Radcliffe, the actor who plays Harry Potter. Like, and I actually, like, when I finished it, like, it was the goal. I wanted to fill that whole wall with Harry Potter, and I actually put up a banner that I made over top of it that said, "Finally, the walls reflect the madness within," which is a play on a quote by Remus Lupin in Prisoner of Azkaban, the movie, where he says to Sirius Black, "Finally, the flesh reflects the madness within." And so I wrestled with getting rid of my stuff, and I couldn't even think about it. It was so horrible. You have to understand, Harry Potter became who I was. It became my whole identity. This is how you know you have a problem. Okay? I was nothing without it. I sacrificed my morals to Harry Potter. Listen, in middle school, there was a contest, a Harry Potter contest, and whoever won would get the last Harry Potter book, Deathly Hallows, a hard copy of it, brand new. And I had to win that test. I had to win that contest, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be the Harry Potter girl. As the Harry Potter girl, I had to win. So I cheated. Yes, I did. I did cheat. To be fair, I wasn't the only one. And it was only for one question, really. I looked up the answer to 2 questions. One of them I already kind of knew. I just was making sure. The other one, I couldn't remember what SPEW stood for, which I think it's the Society for the Protection of Elfish Welfare, but I could be wrong about that. I don't really know. Who even knows? Who cares? But anyway, I did cheat. I wasn't the only one. But the point is, I don't cheat. Cheating is wrong. Cheating is not okay in the Christian faith, and I did it anyway for Harry Potter because I needed to win that contest for a book that I already had. I already had 2 versions of that book. That book, I had like the copies that I was all writing my notes in, and then I had like pristine hard copies, the hardbound hardcover that I had on display in my room. This was the 3rd book I won. I didn't need it. Somebody who actually needed it could have had it, and I took it from them. That's not the only thing. What else did I do? I was so involved in watching Harry Potter videos on YouTube that I forgot to do the dishes. And my mom was so mad that she grounded me. I don't get grounded, you see. I'm the good kid. I follow the rules. I don't get grounded. But this one time I got grounded, and I wasn't allowed to use my computer. I wasn't allowed to be on the internet. But that night, while she was in bed, I did the dishes, but then I went right back on the computer. I went on anyway. I completely disregard the rules, completely, because I could not, for whatever reason, not be on YouTube watching Harry Potter videos. It was a problem. But I didn't want to admit it to myself. I didn't want to admit it to myself. I kept telling God, "Why are you telling me to get rid of Harry Potter? It's not a problem. It's not a problem." I kept telling you, "I love you. I love you. I love you, God. I worship you. I don't worship Harry Potter." And God's like, "No, you don't. You don't love me." And this is how he spoke to me. He spoke to me through the Holy Spirit. He said, it's not, maybe I should explain that. We Christians believe we can talk to God. That sounds really nuts, I know. But through the Holy Spirit, it's not an audible voice. Maybe there is a Christian out there that hears God's audible voice. I've never heard of it. He usually speaks to us like through the Word. Everybody can be spoken from. God can speak to anybody through the Word, through the Bible. That's what we call the Word. But he can also speak through other people. Like he brought friends into my life who spoke to me. He can talk in dreams. He doesn't usually talk to me in dreams, but he has done it. He talks to us in various different ways, but mostly, for me at least, he talks to me through my spirit, through my thoughts. I can hear him in my thoughts. So I just, sometimes it's a feeling in my spirit, so to speak. Just go with it. I know it sounds weird. Just go with it. So he was speaking to me. He was saying, no, you don't love me, and Harry Potter is a problem. And so I said, it's not a problem. It isn't. I don't know what you're talking about. And God said to me, okay, if Harry Potter's not a problem, then don't go see the last Harry Potter movie in theaters. Okay, so like I told this story to my Bible study group, and they all went, oh, no way, because they know, like, they already know, like, how awful that would be. No, I told him no, straight up no, I can't do that, because, well, I couldn't sleep at night at the idea of not going to see that movie. I could not. I had cold sweats every night thinking about not going to see that movie. What would my friends think? I wouldn't be the Harry Potter girl if I didn't go. That was my thought process. That's how you know you have a problem. If you feel so tied to something that you feel like you're nothing if you don't do it, that's how you know it's a problem. Nobody needs to see a movie. Nobody. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. No, it's not something you need. It should not be that way. So God told me not to see that movie. And guess what? I did it anyway. I went to that movie because there was no way I wasn't going to see that movie. I went with my sister, and I sat in the theater, and I was like shaking during the whole movie. If you're a Harry Potter fan and you watch a Harry Potter movie for the very first time, you're shaking through the whole thing. And I'm just bawling my eyes out over Snape and the pensive scene. You know the scene. And my sister looks at me and she says, "You have a problem." And like, she actually talked to me in the car on the way home after that. She was like, "I don't know what it is about you and Harry Potter, but you have a serious issue." And listen to me, my sister is not spiritual. She's not a spiritual person. I didn't even know if she knew God at that time. But, like, if she was telling me I have a problem, then I probably had a problem. I went to talk to my parents about it one more time. I said, one more time, I'm going to go talk to my parents, and they're going to say, it's fine, it's okay, do what you want to do, and I'm going to feel better, and it's all going to be okay. So then I go to talk to my parents, and I say, is Harry Potter okay? Please tell me that it is okay for me. And my mom finally said, you know what, Erica, if you have to ask so many times, maybe it is an issue. And so I had to, that's when I decided that I had to get rid of all my Harry Potter stuff. That conversation happened like a month or so before I went to see the last Harry Potter movie. I went back and forth between getting rid of my Harry Potter stuff. Going back and forth between, yes, I need to get rid of it, it's good for me, and no, I misheard God, it's fine, it's not a big deal. I went back and forth constantly. But after I came home, after I saw the last Harry Potter movie, I faced God there in my bedroom. I was in Columbus, Georgia at the time. It was July 15th, 2011, 4 o'clock in the morning. I actually have a reference to it right there. I made that on the most recent anniversary of that moment. Yeah, I decided that I would dedicate my life back to God. I said, you're right, I have a problem. And I said, I won't run anymore. And so what I did was I took all my stuff, and you have to understand, it was extremely painful. It was a long, long night. Taking all the stuff down, and as I'm throwing stuff I'm like taking stuff off my shelves, taking stuff out of my closet, out of the bins under my bed, just loading all my Harry Potter stuff on the floor, just crying, just bawling my eyes out, and just crying because I was like, God, I hate you. I hate you. Why are you making me do this? I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And you know all those times where I was saying, I love you, God, I love you. And he said, no, you don't. He was absolutely right. Because it was only that my true feelings came out when he took the one thing that I cared about. And he said, finally, we're getting somewhere. Because God doesn't want your fake garbage. He doesn't want you showing up to church on Sunday and reading your Bible and just saying how you love God, but then you go home and you continue living the way that you always lived. He doesn't want your fake shit. He doesn't want it. He can't use that. You can't lie to him. You need to go to him honestly. And so I was finally like, there's like this relief of not having to pretend that I loved God and that I was obedient to him anymore. And so I took all my stuff and I made 3 piles. I put one pile was stuff I was going to give away to charity. Stuff that it was like a lot of good shirts that I had, a lot, the uniform, the toys I had. I had a Harry Potter Clue game. Did you know that there is a Harry Potter version of the game Clue? It is really cool. You should get it. It's awesome. I love that game. There's a Harry Potter version of it. I had all the Harry Potter scene it. Because I made a new scene it every time a Harry Potter movie came out, so I owned all of them at the time. And I gave away the books to charity as well. All the extra copies I had, and I gave those to charity as well. I had another pile that was going in the garbage, stuff that I couldn't really give to charity. It was my Harry Potter shirts that I couldn't wear anymore because they had like holes and in the armpits and stuff. I kept like little trinkets from like the 5 different Harry Potter birthday cakes I had, because Harry Potter was always the theme I wanted for my birthday. The little toys that come on the top, and I saved like the paper or the plastic tablecloth from my birthday parties as well. I threw that out. Things like that. But then there was a pile of stuff that I absolutely could not get rid of. It was my jewelry, this stuff here. Actually, I got these later, but my prefix badge, that's actually that I got that later too. But this and my other jewelry that I had, the movies, the DVDs, and some fan fiction I really just didn't have the heart to throw away. The discs, the games that I had, also my autographed picture of Daniel Radcliffe, as well as my autographed letter from Daniel Radcliffe, and my autographed picture of Emma Watson. I just couldn't throw those out. They were too valuable to me. So I put them in a box, and I texted my friend Kelly. She's a Harry Potter fan too, and she's also a Christian. And so I told her, I need you to hold on to this stuff for me. I don't know when I can have these back or if I can have these back, but I want you to hold on to them for me. And so she agreed, and so I mailed them to her. She was 3 time zones away at the time. Still is. We're still 3 time zones away, but at the time, we were apart, so I mailed it to her. Because when God told me to do this, he was actually very kind. And he said, he didn't say throw Harry Potter away. He didn't say get rid of it, because he agreed that it is still good. He said, give him to me. He said, give it to me. I will hold him, and I will keep him safe for you. He said, give him to me, and I will give him back to you 10 times more, 100 times more. Give to me, and I'll give back to you. And so, we Christians, we believe that God isn't just active in the spiritual world, he's active in the physical world too. But we don't always live like we believe it. It's always kind of something that happens to other people, it doesn't happen to us. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, right, you're going to take my Harry Potter stuff from some landfill, you're going to pick it up and you're just going to drop it in my lap. Yeah, okay. So I gave up my stuff knowing full well that I probably would never see it again. And I'm just putting my stuff away, dragging it to the curb, and just asking God. Well, that's another thing I had. I also had a Harry Potter stand-up. You know, like sometimes for like at the movie theater, they'll have like these pop-out stand-up characters for whatever movie they're promoting, or they had one of Harry Potter reaching up for the Elder Wand for Deathly Hallows. They had one at the midnight release for Deathly Hallows. My friend snagged that for me, so I also had that. I had to throw him away. But I'm asking God, why am I doing this? Why are you making me do this? And he looked at me and he said, because it does not do to dwell on dreams, Erica, and forget to live. Well, when he starts spouting Harry Potter at me, it's over. He looked at me the same way that Dumbledore looks at Harry in the astronomy tower and said, trust me. Trust me. So I did. I got rid of everything. So shortly after that, I went to college, and it was a Christian college, so I was rewarded for my behavior. I was in a place where it wasn't easy to be tempted to fall back. And my roommates and my hallmates knew my story. They knew that I was into Harry Potter and what I had done. But I was studying one day, and my hallmate, Sarah, texts me, is this for real? This is a year later. I should mention this first. This is a year later. This is almost a year later. Not quite a year later. Maybe more like 6, 7 months, 8 months later. I prayed every single day to God. I said, I want my stuff back, but I only want it the right way, because I don't want you to take it away again. I only want it the right way. I don't want my stuff without you. And I prayed that every day for almost a year. And then I get that text. I'm sitting there studying, because that's what you do at Christian college. Other colleges, you don't study. Christian colleges, you do. There are parties. You just don't know that. If you're the good Christian student, you don't know about them. But I got a text from Sarah saying, is this for real? And she sends me a picture of a flyer that's hanging up in the Sanderson building, which is the English building. I was an English major at the time, so I was in there a lot. Most of my classes were in Sanderson. And I ran all the way to Sanderson from my dorm building. And I look at this flyer. And this flyer is an advertisement for the class that's for a fall class coming up, called Special Topics Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter, English majors, all English majors were required to take a special topics class, and special topics are just like particulars in the English, in English literature. You can take it on all various kinds of things, but Harry Potter was the one they're offering. They offered a class studying the Harry Potter books. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I can't do that. Like, oh yes, I have to sign up. And then I'm just like, I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. That's not who I am anymore. But then I heard the Holy Spirit speak to me. And he said, Erica, that's for you. Yeah. And I knew instantly that that was God's way of keeping his promise to me, of giving my stuff back to me. It's one of those things, if you're a Christian and you have that relationship with God, you know that sometimes God gives you gifts and you know that they couldn't be for anybody but you. In high school, I believe it was senior year or junior year, I forget which one, we did Secret Santa for our AP English, and I hate Secret Santa because I never ever get a person that I know who to shop for. Like, I always get somebody that I know nothing about. But it's one of those things where you would do Secret Santa where you'd have a gift, every week leading up to Christmas. A small gift or something that you make or something that you buy under $20, that sort of thing. So there'd be a new gift at the beginning of each week leading up to Christmas. So I walk in the first week, and there's nothing. There's nothing for me. Nothing at all. And I'm like, oh, great, I got that one. There's always, there's people that do Secret Santa that are really into it, and they always, like, make you something cool or get you something cool or something you really wanted or whatever. And then there's people that really just don't care, and they don't participate at all. I was like, okay, great. I have one of the people that won't participate. Okay, great. So I was just like, I was bummed out. I was like, that really sucks. Don't be that person. That's really shitty. Don't be that person. But I showed up, and there's nothing there for me. So, okay. So the next week comes. I walk into class. Still nothing. I had given up all hope that I would ever see anything. But then I walk into class the third week, and I see this beautiful handmade puppet stage with curtains. It's bursting with glitter, and it has these handmade Potter puppet pals in it. And I know there's no way that gift belonged to anybody but me. That gift was for me, because I was the Harry Potter girl. It was absolutely 100% mine. It was even filled with my favorite candy bar at the time. And it turns out that the girl who was my Secret Santa, the reason why I didn't have my gifts the first 2 weeks is because she was making it. She put all this time and effort into this beautiful thing. And it took 3 weeks to make, and it was so beautiful and wonderful. Like, I completely forgot that I didn't have gifts the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks, it didn't even matter. I didn't even care. I had to get rid of it, unfortunately. That was one of the things that I threw out, but it was beautiful, and I appreciated it. And there's no way that it was meant for anybody but me, and that's exactly what this class was. Harry Potter, Special Topics Harry Potter, God put that in my life, that specific moment, for me. And that meant I could get my stuff back. I had to. The textbooks for the class were the Harry Potter books, so I had to buy my books back. I bought all my books, and I had to buy the textbooks too, and Beetle the Bard. I also bought that too. And I texted Kelly, and I had her send my stuff back, and she did. And the class was wonderful. I was studying Harry Potter and everything that makes it wonderful in a Christian setting. And we talked about how wonderful it was and all the special themes and stuff. And I talk about it frequently, actually. Half of what I've learned about Harry Potter came from that class. God did exactly what he said he'd do. He brought my stuff back to me. But he said he'd do it 100 times more. So later, in December, I get a text from my parents saying, we're going on a marriage retreat to Disney, and we're taking you kids with us. But instead of getting you a Disney ticket, we got you an Orlando ticket instead. Which means God essentially arranged for me to go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which is where I got this, actually. And some other stuff, too. That's actually half the stuff that you see in the thumbnail for this video, I got there. So, like, not only did God give me my stuff back, but he sent me to the one place I wanted to go in all the world. I was floored. I was undone. I was undone by the fact that God had done that he was able and willing and so generous. And maybe you're thinking, that's a coincidence. Okay, I understand why you'd say that. We don't believe in coincidences in Christianity. God can use anything. God can do anything. He throws nothing away. And I was just floored. And so that's why it says on there, the things we lose have a way of coming back to us. That's exactly what Luna says in the movie Order of the Phoenix. And so the things I lost came back to me 100 times more, just like God said would happen. I'm completely transformed because of this event. I'm completely different. If I were to go back, It's like that Linkin Park song. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. If I went back to high school, no one would recognize who I was anymore. Listen, Harry Potter is still in my life, as you know, as you can see, as is obvious. But I'm not bound to it anymore. I don't dwell there anymore. I can enjoy it. My world is open. I've read other things. I've watched other things since Harry Potter. Since it was taken from me, my eyes have been opened. There's so many other things that I'm into now. I'm wearing a Hunger Games shirt right now. It's kind of hard to see. It's a tree. It has like 2 nooses, and it says, "Are you coming to the tree?" It's pretty awesome. But I'm into the Hunger Games and Artemis Fowl and Alex Rider and Doctor Who and X-Files and other things that I'm not even thinking of at the moment. Sherlock Holmes. I feel like there's something else too. Chronicles of Narnia. You name it. Twilight. That's it. I'm into so many other things now. I've made friends. I've gone to other places. The world is a beautiful, bright place out there, which is what I love about the Harry Potter movie about Sorcerer's Stone. Is that after Harry has that talk with Dumbledore about not seeing the Mirror of Erised again, they have him outside in the beautiful snow with his beautiful owl, showing him the beautiful world that's out there, outside of his little dream world that he's missing. I'm free to love Harry Potter, and I'm not bound by it. I'll never be the same again because of what God did for me. That's what God did for me. Every Christian has a story. Ask any Christian, they have a story. None of them is like mine. I am so happy. Like, I look at my story and I'm so proud that God chose to give this story to me. Because honestly, just like that Potter Puppet Pals stage, it could belong to nobody but me. And I'm honored. My story had a very happy ending but I confess that I still have issues. I still have idols in my life that I cling to that I'm being asked daily to let go of. The fact is, I'm not attached to Harry Potter anymore. I'm attached to something else now. And so I'm being called to let it go again. But I can do it because I've done it before. I remember. I go back to that place. I remember being in my bedroom and God saying, trust me. I'll do it again. I'll do it again and again and again because he's worth it, because he keeps his promises. So I don't know what you believe, and maybe you're not convinced, and that's okay. The story's not for you, it's for me. And if you happen to be benefited by it, great. There's nothing you could say to change my mind about my story. And I hope you have a story someday. If you don't have one yet, if you're not interested in God and you're not interested and you don't get it or you don't care, that's fine. But if you are interested and you do care, I ask that you would seek him out. Because he wants you to. And because he has something good for you out there right now, that he is good and he does keep his promises and he has something better for you than what you're holding on to. Go to church. There's millions of them in this country. If you're in the United States, that is. Seek him out. I promise you, he will make himself known to you. But yeah, that's my story. It's an awesome story. I absolutely love telling it. I've told it so many times. I'll tell it to anybody who will listen because I think it's super cool that the God that used to be just some guy that I, heard about in a church suddenly became real. Suddenly became somebody who's active and alive in my life, and he still is. And I will tell about him to anybody who's willing to listen. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you are watching this after the fact, please leave a comment down below. Tell me your story. I hope you all have stories. Whether it's about God or not, I want to hear your story. All your story is always important. Doesn't Doctor Who say something about that? No, he doesn't say something about stories. He says something about people. And then he says, of all the people I've ever met on Earth, in all my journeys, I've never met somebody who was unimportant. I think he says something like that. But anyway, stories are important. They're the most precious thing that you have. Guard it with your life. Share it with the world. Your world needs your story. Comment, leave a like on the stream, leave a like on the video, so other people can hear my story. After that, if you haven't already, click subscribe, and then click the notification bell so that you know the next time I go live. I go live every day except Wednesdays and Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I stream video games. We're currently working on Sherlock Holmes. That's what we'll be doing on Monday. I also play The Sims on Thursdays, and I'm currently playing Nancy Drew on Fridays. Yes, and cool, good. I think that's everything. I'm tired and hungry. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry about that, Julia. Wrote your college admissions essay about it, did not get in. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much for watching. So I will end it there. I'll let you go. So have a good night and have a magical evening. Bye-bye.